This is the Mended Paths podcast with Chadwick Hayward, episode number 9.
Welcome to mendedpaths.com. Let's get back to bed.
Hello, Path Menders. Thank you so much for joining me for the 9th episode of the Mended Paths podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jason Cohen, an entrepreneur and photographer at Jason Cohen Photography. Not only did Jason lose over 100 pounds, he is currently producing a weekly podcast called Big Change the Film Podcast. This is preparation work for a documentary that will be released in the future called Big Change the Film. Jason's podcast and eventual film shares the inspirational stories of real people who've achieved significant weight loss through sustainable diet and lifestyle changes. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Jason. It's fantastic to have you here.
Thanks for the opportunity.
So I actually came across your name when I was speaking with Tim Kaufman a couple of weeks ago, and he was mentioning a documentary that you're working on. Do you want to start by talking a little bit about what you got going on there?
Yeah, so I know Tim. We kind of connected through, we've got a mutual friend through Josh Lajani, who's actually just right down the road from me. And basically, I kind of had my own set of changes that's kind of happened over the last 6 or 7 years. I previously was around 300 pounds. 297 was the highest weight that I knew about, but I avoided the scale like the plague. So I'm confident that it was above that at some point. And just through a kind of a perfect storm of events, ended up just realizing that, maybe I could do something about it when previously I'd been living under the assumption for most of my adult life and even before then that, my weight and was just my circumstances and there was nothing I could do about it. And so, I started somebody gave me a bicycle as a gift. That kind of was a starting point for me. A couple other things happened. And then I just started losing the weight. And then, fast forward to several years later, I look much different. Life looks a lot different for me now. And, I realized that a big part of the reason that I'm where I am today is because of the fact that people gave back to me, and people encouraged me and people gave me time. And I realized at some point that, in order to really, be a good steward of that I had to be part of that process giving forward as well. And so, long story short, had the idea to maybe try and provide some inspiration for people and, ended up spending a couple of days filming Josh Lajani. And then ended up filming, we just got back from filming Tim. And really the idea is to do a full length documentary that kind of follows 4 people who've all lost significant amounts of weight, and have been able to keep it off. And hopefully that documentary would serve as a way for, people like my former self who thought that they were just kind of stuck in a prison of their own body, as, some people might put it, that they can see real life people that there's nothing special about them. And see that, really they can take control of their life and that there's a life for them that they maybe even never imagined there was before.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. So you had mentioned a lot of people say health is a gift, like the gift of health. And your transition personally really started with a gift of a bike, right? So yeah. I guess how did your transition transpire? Was it all just increase in physical activity initially or?
Yeah, honestly, anything in the physical or in the eating world would have been a move in the right direction for me. I kind of joke and say everything I ate was beige before. If you were to...
Oh, yeah, I totally get that.
If you were to look at me on, Thanksgiving Day or on every day at lunch, everything was a different shade of beige, basically. And so any difference there would have been a positive difference. And then, for the most part, my life was pretty sedative. So in the same way, any move would have, in any direction would have been a positive thing. And so, while I got the bike, I also lost a friend, I think, prematurely, who was not that much older than me and actually looked a lot better than me, and kind of was a little bit of a wake up call. I just realized, hey, I'm not that far out. I saw other friends who were a little older than me who were experiencing what most people would refer to as just, dealing with old age.
Yeah.
As far as, having problems, having surgeries, becoming bigger. And I just realized, I was a couple of years out from 30 and I realized, okay, if there's any time to do something, now is the time. And, if it is true that I'm just given this set of circumstances, nothing I can do, then that's one thing. But there's maybe a chance that there's actually something else lying underneath that, and maybe I hadn't ever really given it a real try, And so,
Okay.
So it kind of just started out, and then which ended up being a great thing, kind of ironic in the end, but I did a weight loss competition with a friend for 6 months, and I picked somebody who was extremely competitive, and I knew 6 months was long enough to where I actually would have to commit to something. And so I ended up winning that competition. Ironically, the prize was to a really nice restaurant, and we gorged ourselves. And then, at some point, at that point, I lost 50 pounds. I lost 10 pounds before the competition, 40 in the competition.
Okay.
And I just kind of had this realization that, like, wait, there's something going on here. There's a possibility here that I previously thought was impossible. And so, it was kind of when I got to the end of that competition, I saw potential that I hadn't seen previously. And I felt like I was on the door, knocking at the door, realizing there was a lot more behind it.
So it gave you hope, essentially.
Yeah, it gave me hope, and it gave me a lot of motivation. It gave me like a little bit of, not say a little bit, it gave me a lot of confidence in myself that previously I just didn't have.
Okay. So did you and your challenge partner follow the same approach to losing weight?
No. I mean, it was very much the tortoise and the hare. The hare, I was the tortoise. I was like, I realized that 6 months was a long time to do anything.
Yeah.
And I would talk to anybody. I would go everywhere, which now in hindsight, at the time I was just doing kind of what naturally exists within me as far as being an outgoing person and being curious. But I was asking everybody like, hey, if you lost weight, what did you do? Or I would tell people everywhere I would go about the weight loss competition. So what that meant was that people would always ask me about how I was doing. So without really realizing it, I was kind of throwing it out there and putting it in front of people, realizing that without realizing that was going to kind of create in a way some accountability.
Totally.
I maybe wouldn't have had otherwise.
Okay.
So yeah, and unfortunately he came out blazing. I came out really slow. He ended up actually gaining weight during the competition.
Seriously?
I lost about 40. The other reason I was extremely motivated is it was at a nice restaurant with a really nice wine menu, and I knew he really liked wine, so I knew it was going to cost me a lot of money. So I was seeing hundreds of dollars, and I was like, man, I don't want to lose that much money.
Yeah. So what did you do? What did those first 6 months look like?
Well, I had the bicycle, and my office at the time was probably around 4 miles away. So I started, riding my bike to work. And, initially I didn't think it was possible. And then I started doing it, and I started really enjoying it. And then it started, I'd have a mental clarity when I got to work that I just didn't have previously, or I'd have an excitement, I'd have some energy that, previously it just didn't exist. And so, that played a huge role. That kind of is where my love for cycling began. And then I ended up, using that kind of when I was in town as a primary mode of transportation when I could, when weather allowed. And then, I would just, I started trying things. I was an extremely picky eater as a kid. And so, I'm still today, 7 years later, still trying things for the first time because, the pickiness has carried me through. And I eat things now that I would have never imagined eating before. And so it was a slow process. But again, any move in the right direction, anything but macaroni and cheese and pizza, which was like, as my wife and I called it, the bachelor special, because we could both eat for like, $3, or we'd both go to the Chinese restaurant and split a meal for like $6.
Yeah.
When we were in college, that's what we ate, and it was cheap, it was efficient. And of course it was extremely pleasurable. And so any change from General Tso's mac and cheese and Totino's 99-cent pizza, even if that was just iceberg lettuce, like it was a positive direction change.
Yeah. Yeah. Iceberg lettuce doesn't add a ton of nutrition, but it's not a ton of crap either.
Yeah. Well, when you compare it to Velveeta cheese lovers,
that's right.
when it's a negative compared to a neutral, it's still higher.
That's right. Okay, so for the most part, it was I guess it was a combination between exercise and just being more cognizant of what you ate.
Yeah, and I think I'd gone from basically most of my adult life, at least in the recent past, of always being at a calorie excess and at a food excess to where I was more moderating.
Okay.
You know, even if it wasn't on purpose, you know, and then I was eating, I mean, I hate to use the word mistake, but compared to where kind of, you know, I eat today or the things that I really enjoy today, it's vastly different. But, you know, I was eating, you know, meal replacement bars from, you know, the gas station and, you know, just anything. But again, you know, from a caloric standpoint and from just a quantity standpoint, it was still a move in the right direction.
Okay.
So, yeah. And it was, you know, this whole thing has just been one grand experiment. I mean, even my transition to how I eat now really began as an experiment because I said to myself, I'm willing to, you know, I'd hit a plateau in my weight loss. And I said, I'm willing to do anything for 2 or 3 months. You know, I can endure anything for 2 or 3 months to lose some weight. And that was kind of my attitude. I would try anything. You know, if somebody said I needed to bounce around on a mini trampoline, I would do that. If I needed to, you know, eat these terrible, you know, meal replacement shakes, I would do that because I was motivated.
Yeah. So really it was like you were basing your diet on intuition. You didn't really go out and seek out new information on what is good, what isn't. It was just
intuition would be a generous word. More like roaming around in the dark with a pinpoint flashlight, and every once in a while you kind of find something.
That's awesome. Okay, so what's your diet look like now then?
So right now it's whole food, plant-based. And, you know, like I said, it kind of began as an experiment. It's actually funny because I one day woke up and said, you know, I'm just going to try vegetarian for a little bit. And
okay.
I just kind of announced this to my wife and she was not thrilled about the idea because that, you know, she was the one who really cooked and it meant, you know, preparing 2 different sets of food. And, you know, my attitude was, you can do whatever you want, but this is just kind of what I'm doing. And, you know, what happened whenever I kind of tried making the switch to vegetarian, which was a big deal because previously I didn't really eat vegetables, was that I started feeling better and my energy levels were higher. And that was something that I really didn't anticipate, but kind of just came as a side effect in a way.
Okay.
And then once I started feeling better, it was like, wow, like this is like, maybe there's something to this. And then, you know, that kind of was a transition to, I came home one day and announced to my wife, hey, I think I'm going to do vegan for like a month, you know, just again, as an experiment.
Yeah.
And, she was like, are you kidding me? You know, like you and your crazy ideas again. And then, you know, it took a couple of days and then, you know, we made that transition and that's been, you know, phenomenal. And, you know, like I used to have bad allergy issues and that is for the most part non-existent these days.
That's awesome.
And so, you know, there've just kind of been some things that were not necessarily the intention or the part of the original plan, but just kind of worked out in the end.
So at the beginning there, you said with vegetarian, you said that your wife was resistant and that you were doing your own kind of thing. But then when you switched to vegan, you used the terminology we switched after a couple of days. So did you find that your wife was resistant at first, but then quickly came on board, or what was like her take on it?
I mean, I don't want to throw her under the bus, but I don't think she would argue with the fact that she was definitely not thrilled with it, you know, because again, which, not to get off topic, but, you know, kind of another unintended benefit from this whole thing is that I never cooked before. I would literally wait on the couch, you know, on my computer for my wife to say dinner's ready. And part of that was a non-interest. Part of that was also, you know, she kind of viewed it as I was in the way and I didn't know what I was doing as well. And so in the process of all this, now we've kind of unlocked this part of our relationship that we just previously were not connected with, which is we love to cook now together. We love to be in the kitchen. We love to experience new things. And, you know, it's a collaboration instead of like, you know, we're at war with each other when we're in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, that's awesome.
But initially she was hesitant, you know, because again, I'm a switch on or switch off kind of person. And so when I decided, she knew that meant that I wasn't going to eat XYZ, what we probably already had in the fridge that she had already gone shopping for. And that meant if we went to a friend's house or a restaurant, or if we had a favorite meal, that I wasn't going to eat that anymore. And, you know, for her, she's more of a planner and she's more of a, you know, and again, for me, like, and I think, you know, for me, it was a great way to look at it. This has been one grand experiment, which for me if I look back on it, it's worked out pretty well as an experiment.
Oh yeah, I would say so. Because, well, how much weight have you lost since you began?
So I'm down to like 171, 172. So I'm down about 125 pounds.
Well, that's incredible.
Yeah. So it's been good. It's been really good.
And so you said that's about 6 years or so.
Yeah, probably 6, 7. I don't have an exact date on, whenever. I remember there was a time when I got on the scale and I saw 297 and I said to myself, basically, I won't let you get above 300 pounds. And that was kind of a very strong turning point for me, at least mentally. But unfortunately, I don't have any like pictures or data. I mean, I have pictures of me like with friends, but I hadn't really started.
You don't have a before picture per se.
Yeah. And I have plenty of pictures of me before in social situations where it clearly does not look like what I look like now. But I didn't, I know some people have kind of like a start date with like a picture with their shirt off and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't have a date that was, very definitive.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It was a slow transition, so it wasn't like I woke up this morning and said, okay, I'm now getting into shape and losing all this weight, and therefore let's take a picture and progress my way through. So I totally get where you're coming from on that. No, that's incredible. So like,
thank you.
How long have you been maintaining, like, to lose that 100 pounds? Did it take you the full 6 years? I'm assuming not.
No, I've probably been 100 pounds down for like 2 or 3 years now. And then, to be honest with you, it's just been a slow kind of honing of sorts. I mean, I would still say, in my mind, I'm still not finished. I'm still working towards something. And it's the same motivation that motivated me to get from 297 to 295 is the same motivation that, motivates me to get from 171 to 169 or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a continual, and I'm totally open to experimentation. So I've been running a ton. It's something that previously I had never done before. And I had always said that, like I couldn't run because of my knee would hurt and things like that.
Sure. Yeah.
And now I run all the time. So, the experiment continues.
That's awesome. And so has your wife saw benefits as well?
Yeah, she was never nearly, she didn't have nearly the amount of weight to lose. She definitely, if you look at old pictures, she's definitely thinned out significantly. And then she's also, just reaped the benefits of energy and feeling better. And, we used to, the things that we enjoy doing together have just changed dramatically. So most of the things that we do now, are typically, in an ideal situation, we're going to go for a bike ride together, or we're going to go kayaking together, or go running together. Which, if you'd have told me that 8 years ago, I would have laughed at you. But those are the things that we really enjoy. We really enjoy going hiking together. And so the things that we enjoy doing, number one, are no longer in front of a TV, which wasn't that we necessarily enjoyed it. It was just kind of what we did before.
Yeah.
And now, we get to do things that are going to hopefully improve our quality of life, improve our longevity, give us also time that we can kind of be purely together. And so, yeah, I think she's seen some huge benefits. When you look at her physically, she also, weighed less than half of what I weighed. So the amount that she had to lose, was not nearly as much, but there's definitely still a bit of a difference. She looks good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I hear this theme coming up so much that like you start to want to move more. It's like your body tells you that no, like where you would come home and sit on the couch because you were so exhausted after your day of work or whatnot. Your body now tells you that it's like, no, I don't want to sit down. You've got to do something.
Right. And it kind of sounds a little cheesy, and I get it, but it's so true. I mean, it's unbelievable how you just don't think that those things are kind of there waiting for you, and truly they are.
Yeah. So how much do you bike and run and whatnot now?
Well, so these days running has kind of taken over just because of time. It proves to be the most efficient.
Yeah.
Like this morning I went for a ride and it really wasn't that long. I had to leave the house at 6:30. I didn't get back till after 10. I could have gotten the same amount of quote unquote exercise running in an hour or two, instead of,
calories burnt.
3+. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I still, really love commuting around town as far as on the bicycle. So I typically try and ride a bit, and then I try and work in a little bit of weights here and there. And then actually on Monday, I'm leaving for a bike trip. So I've really been trying to get my legs under me for the bike, just because I've not been preparing properly.
So what kind of bike trip are you going on?
Well, there's a highway that goes between Nashville and Natchez called the Natchez Trace.
Okay.
And I think it's like 400, just shy of 450 miles. And so it's closed to commercial vehicles, and the speed limit is a bit lower than what you would find on other highways.
Okay.
And they're supposedly used to seeing cyclists. And there's a bunch of, places where you can camp, get water, things like that. So a buddy of mine are going to go and do it. And then we'll hopefully knock out about 70 miles a day. And it'll take us, somewhere in the 7-day mark.
That's awesome. So it's not like a competition or anything. It's just you're good.
No.
This is what you do for fun now.
Yeah. I just have to get to my car, on the south end of it. So the only competition is actually getting back to the car to be able to drive home.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It'll be fun.
Cool. So what's your video looking like? Like your documentary that you've already obviously interviewed Josh, right? And Tim.
Right. You
said there's going to be 4 people you're kind of featuring?
Yeah. So whenever I initially, I filmed Josh, I had, it was really just an idea. And I have a buddy of mine who we do photo and video work together. And I just kind of pitched the idea to him. I said, look, I kind of have this vision for doing a documentary on 4 people who've all lost significant amounts of weight. At the time, a lot of weight lost to me was 100 pounds. Yeah. Little did I know I would be talking to people all the time who've lost like 200 plus pounds. And so I basically, pitched the idea to Josh, and we went down and filmed him, put something out there just kind of to recap his story. And then I started getting requests. And so, knowing that I didn't have the time or money to start traveling to all these different people, I basically started doing Skype interviews. And so those get turned into weekly, YouTube interviews and a podcast. And then kind of from that, basically meeting people, getting connections. And then the idea is that would lead to having 4 people total. So we've done Josh, we've done Tim. The idea is that I would love to have as, kind of socially diverse, but also geographically diverse group of people as possible.
Okay.
So that no matter who it is sits down to watch the documentary, that hopefully they'll be able to connect with one or more people. And so, right now I have 2 guys who've lost over 200 pounds each. My goal is that the next 2 people would hopefully be women, so that, it's not just all guys.
Yeah.
And hopefully, Josh is in Louisiana, Tim is in Buffalo. So hopefully we would also be able to kind of provide some geographical diversity in there, so that, if somebody's watching it in a completely different part of the country, that they can say, well, that person talks like I talk like, or, they used to eat like I ate.
They can relate. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and really the idea came from, I was on my bicycle trainer one day. It was raining outside, and I was looking through Netflix, through documentaries, and I pretty much watched most of them that I was interested in. And I realized there was a lot of great information, but for the person who maybe is sitting there, who is, even 40 pounds overweight or 100 pounds or 200 pounds overweight, that it may be hard to relate to some of those things. And I just thought that there was kind of a hole missing in the inspiration realm for somebody just being able to kind of really connect and grab something and say, this is possible. I can do this.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who just suffered heart attacks or that kind of thing. And like, there's a common theme where a lot of people find their changes after some sort of tragedy in their life. And so if you can get that spark before someone faces something terrible like that, that's obviously better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I know, statistically, I think that's, people kind of point to exactly what you said as oftentimes a big motivating factor for people. But then at the same time, I have to think at some level that, is it that way because that's the only thing that's out there for people to see or people to realize? And, I'm not saying that anything I could do could, change humanity or anything, but hopefully, I know that for myself personally, all I can do is kind of speak to my former self, because that's all that I know, is that if somebody would have come alongside of me and shown me somebody who had also lived under the same, kind of lies that I had been living under, and show me a different way, that maybe that would have been enough, that maybe,
you would have at least had a shot.
Yeah, they don't have to have a friend pass away, or they don't have to have a heart attack, or a parent have a heart attack, that maybe they can, save some years of torment and frustration.
Well, yeah, and if one person hears the message and changes their life and is happier and healthier for it, then awesome, right?
Absolutely.
So where can people find your podcast?
So podcast can be found, just look under iTunes or anywhere else you would get podcasts. It's Big Change the Film Podcast. And then on YouTube, you can just search Big Change the Film. And I'll kind of, each week is the plan to have a new person. I think we're somewhere around 25 or 26 episodes.
Cool.
And one cool thing that we do is I always add up the amount of pounds that have been lost thus far. And I think thus far, if I'm not mistaken, we're approaching around 4,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a lot of combined weight.
I know. Yeah. Crazy to think.
Yeah. I know, just over 25 people. That's just incredible.
Yeah. It's staggering. And it's a huge blessing. It's a huge honor for, a lot of times people open up to me and talk about things that, that normally otherwise, at least for my own benefit, I would never be able to hear, or, just personal insights that you kind of live with, or things that kind of, put you down as a bigger person.
Yeah.
That there, there's a commonality there. And the reality is that for a lot of people, regardless of what they say or how they act and how jolly they are, like, it's not a huge life to be desired. And even if it's, even if you don't struggle with the mental side of things, the physical side of things, and eventually the health side of things, it's something to be avoided.
Life has to be a challenge at 300 pounds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, my heart, it was something I was never really, my awareness certainly was not there previously. And it's something that my heart breaks daily whenever I see the people who are around me and the people who, are my next door neighbors or who are in line with me. And I realize, what life is like, and the struggles, and, the mental things that go on.
Yeah.
That are just, that are less than ideal.
Well, and it's in hindsight, it's so easy to change, but when you're in that position, it doesn't necessarily seem that way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we see a lot of like common themes amongst each individual's story, but there's always something new that someone can bring to the table.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and there's just like, you never know. There's a quote that says something, you never know what battle somebody's, fighting secretly or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm botching that, but
the gist is there.
Yeah. But there's real stuff going on, and, there's a clarity that I have now. There's a lightness that I have now, just not just physically, but also emotionally, that I also have come to realize that secretly a lot of people, are also living with that heaviness. And a lot of these people who've kind of come out on the other side also have a lightness. And like I said before, like, there's a life waiting for you. There was a life waiting for me at the other end of this that I never imagined.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't give up for the world now.
Well, that's what I found most incredible, is that, like, you don't know what you're missing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even if you do know that you'd be healthier if you lost some weight, or you ate a little better, like, the fog that's lifted from your mind, like the emotional side of it is, you can't grasp that until you live it.
Absolutely.
So you said you're 25 episodes in right now. Like, let's say I'm listening to this right now and I'm like, well, these are the needle in the haystack. We're finding the individuals, they must be so few and far between that this isn't achievable for me. Like, how difficult is it for you to find guests to come on your podcast? Like, is it like searching through a mountain to find one small diamond, or?
No, it's been, through people like Josh and Tim and others. I do have a couple of people who are so well kind of connected, or just have, kind of a little bit wider net that just continually connect me with people. which has been phenomenal. So far, I haven't, there's contrary to what you turn on when you turn on the television, there's no lack of people out there who are doing it. And obviously with the wonders of the internet these days, it's easier than ever to get to meet those people. But it honestly hasn't been that tough. I'm sure as I get further and further in, I might have to, work a little harder to connect with some of those people rather than, right now I kind of have a little bit of a backlog of interviews, which has been phenomenal. And I sincerely hope that hopefully, as our audience grows, that'll just become bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. People will start finding you as opposed to you reaching out to them.
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so you do video with your podcast as well.
Yeah, I do video. So far it has worked out fairly well. I haven't had it bite me in the butt too bad, other than a couple of lags here and there. And kind of my idea with the video was, kind of the idea with this whole thing is how do I make it as simple as possible? I'm very low tech when it comes to this side of things, just because, I think for some people, again, like I said before, everything that I'm doing is really kind of geared towards my 300-pound self. And my 300-pound self probably wouldn't listen to a podcast.
Fair enough.
Right now, I have no problem listening to a 3-hour podcast. But when I was that weight and when I had that, kind of everything that comes along with that on the mental side of things that was weighing me down as well, I wasn't interested in, a long form thing. So, and the other thing is that I'm a visual person. And so seeing somebody and seeing their picture before and after and seeing them actually sit there and talk in their home, for me, it's kind of just the best medium. And,
fair enough.
And so, so all of them are video. And I think I probably also get more views per video on the video side of things than I do downloads on the podcast at the moment. Yeah.
And you're a photographer by background, right?
I am, yeah, which that kind of, to be honest, that made it very attainable for me to kind of take on this project, especially in the film side of things. I've been real fortunate that Jamie Aurelian is the person who I've kind of partnered with, and he's been the camera guy for both Josh and Tim. But I kind of have those, resources available to me. Jamie's been kind enough to donate his time and equipment in order to kind of get this thing going. And so it's made it a lot more doable for me rather than somebody who, didn't have any, I already had, experience with video production and all that kind of stuff. So, everything was kind of at my fingertips.
Do you have a projected release date for the video?
I don't. First thing is going to be to, first priority is to edit what we shot with Tim. We spent 2 days with Josh. We spent 4.5 days with Tim.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of information there, which was great. And for Tim, if it was Josh, I could probably call him and say, hey, can we reshoot something tomorrow? And it wouldn't be a problem. Whereas for Tim being in Buffalo, I had to know that when we left, that everything was, tidied up. And the whole time we were there, Tim was just like, he's like, we have to keep shoot. We have to shoot again. I mean, it's late, it's early. I mean, we really packed in the days. I mean, we shot 4.5 full days, basically once the sun was starting till the time the sun was over and beyond.
That's incredible.
And yeah. So the next thing will be to edit something together from Tim, which I'd love to start working on once work kind of slows down for me. And then beyond that is to kind of narrow down into who our next 2 subjects are.
Gotcha.
And I don't have any, exact on that. It's kind of a big thing for me to ask somebody to let me invade their life and take over their schedule and take over, their privacy for 3 or 4 days. So I want to make sure that, those are people who, number one, don't think we're serial killers. And then also, there's a little bit of connection and that they're okay with us, at 9:00, me saying, no, we need to still film for another hour and go to bed late tonight and, things like that.
Well, they're going to be opening their lives to the world, so.
Yeah, that too. That's a kind of a big one. Josh and Tim are both kind of used to that, I think, on different levels. If you follow either of them on social media or anything, they're used to being in front of people. Yeah. And so, it's extremely helpful.
Yeah, I'm finding that as a common theme that people who have gone through these changes are more than willing to open up and share their story and let people in. It's like they've experienced vulnerability and now they're
Absolutely.
willing to let the world learn from what they've experienced. So
Absolutely.
have you found your transition has impacted your work at all? Obviously the documentary, but just in your day-to-day job or?
Yeah, one thing that's it's helped with, I used to have a lot of back issues. I mean, I know it's kind of cliche, but when you think about carrying around, I basically was giving my wife a piggyback ride at all times for, a lot of my adult life. And so I developed a lot of back issues. I developed knee issues. Funny enough, my buddy who actually gave me the bicycle, when I first got on the bicycle, I was 300 pounds. And my initial thought was, what the heck are you doing giving a 300-pound man a bicycle? And so a couple of weeks ago, we went for a run and, we ran for well over an hour and he actually hasn't been running. So I was kind of the better one in shape, which is highly ironic. And at least running shape.
Yeah.
And, he said to me, you used to tell me you couldn't run because your knee couldn't take it. Or your knees couldn't take it. And so, I'm just a lot better equipped for a lot of jobs now, in terms of, especially long days.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed, if I'm working on a set or if I'm in a situation where, even the filming for the film, I have an amount of energy that far surpasses anything that I ever had before. And oftentimes that also goes for whoever's around me as well. They end up having, po' boys and fried onion rings for lunch. And then we have a pretty unproductive afternoon.
Yeah.
And I used to just down ibuprofen. It was like 4 ibuprofen every 3.5 hours.
Oh my.
You could have every 4, and I figured just round up, why not? And I know how to kind of listen to my body now, and I have far less back issues than I ever had before, which is just, it just makes quality of life both in work and outside of it a ton better.
Well, my understanding is the capillaries in like the lower back are one of the smallest veins in your body. So they're the first that kind of experience the atherosclerosis. So they get clogged up quickest. And a lot of people, when they experience like that lower back pain, it's actually the nerves being starved of oxygen, because that's where heart disease, the first symptom of it, manifests. So for a lot of people, like, it's not just carrying the weight. It's like your body is not being able to transmit blood and oxygen appropriately. So when I hear people tell me that like back pain has resolved, it's fantastic in my mind, because it tells you that your risk of having that fatal heart attack, which is, I think, like 50% of heart attacks, the first sign is a fatal heart attack. So anything that moves you in the direction away from that is going to be very beneficial, right? So
no doubt. Yeah. Well, like I said, it certainly feels, just unbelievably better. And it definitely translates to work, especially, if I have a long event or I just have a long day of shooting, lots of travel, it gives me I hate to say competitive edge, but in a lot of ways it does, because I'm a lot more productive than I ever was before, and than a lot of my peers as well.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I usually ask my guests if they have a piece of advice for Path Menders who are listening right now. Like if you were to break it down to one thing to tell them, what would that be? I would say, believe in yourself. Don't believe the lies that you've created for yourself or that other people have maybe created for you. And believe that you have the ability to change. Love yourself enough to believe in that, and be willing to take a bet on yourself. And then kind of in that same vein, the other thing is that give it a little bit of time. Don't it took me a really long time to get to 297, so I can't expect that everything's just going to kind of fall off and life's going to be hunky dory. Yeah.
And give yourself some time, and don't try and rush the process. And then also, try and find somebody else that'll believe in you and that'll kind of keep you accountable. Even a small thing. My wife used to, she knew that I wanted to make a change So she would do this, it's super simple, but she would cut up an apple for me every day. So I knew that she's a teacher, so she typically would be out the door, before me. But I knew that whenever I woke up in the morning and was, leaving to go for a shoot or whatever, I had a meeting or whatever, there would be an apple cut up this fridge for me. And I'm just getting home now, and I know that there's an apple in the fridge waiting for me cut up. And, it just makes a huge difference. And it's something simple, but it tells me, that, hey, I believe in you and that, this is possible.
Yeah, a lot of times people are lazy and they just want to grab whatever's available. And if you have junk food in your house, that's typically what you grab. But if you have fruit cut up and fresh and ready to go, then it makes that choice so much easier. Yeah, no. And we Sunday's kind of and it's kind of going off topic, but Sunday's kind of our prep day. And so we'll spend a couple hours on Sunday just prepping food for the week, cutting up carrots, making sauces, making, breakfast bars for me, just things that I know that, I'll have the option to make a good decision. Yeah. Rather than, given to my own devices, I'm not going to, I have to set up some systems to kind of ensure success. Yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing. Every Sunday is our prep day as well, and we try to prep stuff for the week. It just makes life so much easier, so you don't have to spend necessarily all that time every single day. Absolutely. Do you have any advice on making, say, Louisiana Southern style food? What's your favorite recipe? We eat a ton of Asian food now, just because it tends to kind of translate really well. Okay. There's not a lot that you would, probably expect to find in a Cajun restaurant that looks like what we eat these days. So okay. That's a tough one. But, a lot of that is that there's a lot of stuff that I used to eat before that was what we would, call Cajun, or that was in my kind of limited capacity of things to cook that were Cajun, that just had a ton of fat and a ton of salt. And so, because those things don't really play a huge part in what we eat these days, we've kind of moved away from it. But any given night, we're probably more on the Asian track than anything else. Awesome. That's so cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It was awesome speaking with you today. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for what you're doing. And so what's your website again so that people can go there? Yeah, they can go directly to Big Change the Film. That's kind of just a launching page. The best way to find out kind of what's going on week to week is through the Facebook page, and that is just facebook.com/Big Change the Film. Also, I'm on Instagram as Big Change the Film, but Facebook is kind of the big thing. And then actually, if I could mention one thing that I'm really excited about that we're going to do next year, and I'm going to have information on that hopefully before the end of the year, is there's a bunch of people that I've interviewed or that I've just kind of connected with, including both Tim and Josh, who are going to be running the Leadville half and full marathon next June 17th, I believe. Awesome. So where is that? It's in Leadville, Colorado. Okay. Josh and I kind of randomly last minute ran the half last year, and the half is actually like 15.5 miles. Leadville is the tallest town in America. So you start at 10,200 feet, and then you get up to somewhere in the 13,000 range. Oh, wow. So kind of just, on a whim did that last year. And then he came up and then, was just like, well, we got to go back now. And then started talking with Tim and other people. I actually just rented an Airbnb, a whole house that'll kind of be a clubhouse of sorts. It'll be a place for to be able to share meals. And then a couple people will be staying there. And we're going to be there for basically the whole weekend. And hopefully it's actually kind of looking like there's going to be a decent amount of people who are going to come. So that's incredible. I can't wait to sit on the starting line with a bunch of people who have all lost, combined thousands of pounds and then do this thing that, previously we would have all said was impossible. A giant run through the mountains, like basically unexpected, like unbelievable 5 years, 10 years ago. Exactly. 100%. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, thanks again. Thanks so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Absolutely. Have a great day. You as well. Well, alas, that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you so much for listening to the Mend It Path podcast at www.menditpaths.com. Have something to say? send us an email at contact@mendedpaths.com. That's contact@mendedpaths.com. See you all next time.
Visit mendingpaths.com and get back to bed now.